Hi, everybody. I think we are live. This is a self moderated panel. Very excited to be here with Cristina and Pierre. And thank you so much for the invite. I am Eduardo Cotilla-Sanchez, pronounce he, him, and I am an associate professor of electrical and computer engineering at Oregon State University. And my work is in power system protection, power system resilience, and energy access on those topics. And I think continuing our conversation here from the previous panel, I'm excited to talk to Cristina and Pierre about not so much about the generation portfolio of how we can decarbonize our systems, but perhaps a little bit of transition between that generation and how do we get closer and closer to the customer. So what is the infrastructure? What is the topology? How do we interconnect things so that we can make that delivery of electricity greener? And I would like to start just discussing one of the examples that we do research on at Oregon State, and that's using microgrids for energy delivery. So microgrids are essentially areas or clusters of electricity infrastructure that can operate either connected to the bulk power system, for example, to a national grid, or they can also work autonomously, essentially leveraging the local resources. So in some of the projects that we are working on, for example, we are investigating how we can integrate marine energy, for example, ocean energy or tidal energy into these microgrids. One example, if you want to check it out, is down on the coast of Newport, Oregon. And the project is called PacWave Energy. The website is pacwaveenergy.org. So PacWaveEnergy.org. And it's essentially a place for testing and doing research. We have 7 miles off the shore. We have several pods and cables, and they are all under construction. But it is our hope that when we are able to connect and test these marine energy converters, we can go beyond some of the metrics that we are used to in some of the projects kind of onshore. And we can start looking at, what is something beyond the levelized cost of energy? Can we include the cost for the social communities, right? Can we include what is the social justice aspects into those calculations? So that's what I would like to start with, and maybe kind of like add to the discussion. And I'll let maybe Cristina, you want to go next?
Sure. Thank you. Hi, all. I'm Cristina Garcia, she, her. I'm based in New York City, and I work with an organization called the Building Electrification Institute. We are an organization that helps cities across the country accelerate their transition away from fossil fuels. The reason that that's what we focus on is because we believe that minimizing the use of fossil fuels will be the only way that we minimize the worst impacts of climate change. And this transition away from fossil fuels, touching a little bit on what was just said, has given us the opportunity to engage with disenfranchised communities. We want disenfranchised communities to be part of the conversation, be part of the policies and programs that cities are coming up with to deal with the impacts of climate change and with this transition. We also work with cities to help them think through, if this is going to create new jobs, how do we make sure that those jobs are finally going to these same low-income communities that have continuously been left out of emerging professions? So we think that this is going to help and provide an opportunity to engage with the supply chain, that means like the contractors, distributors, everyone that is going to be necessary for this transition to happen. We think that we can engage with small businesses and businesses that are owned by women or minorities, so that they're being part of this transition as well. So as I mentioned, we work with cities. We're currently working with 11 cities, as I said, across the country. And all of these cities believe that we do need to minimize the use of fossil fuels in our buildings, specifically when it comes to providing heat. In most of the country, heat is being provided with natural gas. And as I believe that you heard earlier, electricity is continuously getting cleaner, which means that once we transition to getting our heat from electricity, and that electricity continues to get cleaner, that means the less greenhouse gas emissions that are correlated with our heat. And I know that I'm talking to a broad audience, but like I said, I'm based in New York City, where cooling is becoming basically necessary. And in a lot of cities, it's going to also become more and more necessary as we continue to face the impacts of climate change, which one of those is being increased summer heat waves. And so cooling is going to become a necessity for our safety. As most of us know, cooling is already coming from electricity, but the systems that we're talking about in this transition include higher efficiency systems. So again, that then becomes less greenhouse gas emissions associated with it. So yeah, again, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the discussion. Pierre, I believe you're next.
Yeah, I guess it's my turn. Hello, I'm Pierre. I'm Pierre Lussier. I'm the president of Earth Day Canada. I'm based in Montreal. Much like Earth Day Initiative, we at Earth Day Canada develop year-long programs to sustain our mission and to support our annual Earth Day campaign. Throughout the last decade, we've developed a few programs around mobility. In 2012, with the help of a New York startup, Bandwagon, we've developed a fully integrated taxi ride sharing system. In 2018, we brought to life the first 4 zero-emission refrigerated lightweight truck in Canada. And now, as we speak, and with the help of the Canadian government, we are building one of the largest privately owned fast charging network in Canada. Certainly one of a few networks owned and operated by a charitable environmental organization. This network of 100 fast charging stations is deployed around local grocery stores and is powered by 100% renewable energy. While you are grocery shopping, our network will bring more than 160 miles of autonomy to your electric car. This means a lot to us because we believe that reaching people in their daily lives is key for our green future. If they see the technology and the green services that they provide, it becomes normalized. The transition to a low carbon economy is now tangible. Thank you for having me. And looking forward to the discussion also. It's going to be less redacted.
Yeah, thanks, Pierre. I think there is some points of common connection between all of these projects. I like to connect, for example, what Cristina had mentioned of substituting some of the gas, right, for cooling or heating, and leveraging whatever you have provided by the grid. I think that's a solution, right? Assuming that we have the right infrastructure, we can really save a lot of emissions, right? And I think we're starting to learn that, for example, in some projects, adding energy storage is cheaper than, kind of like burning gas. And I think that, we will be able to do it better if we integrate better and better that structure of, for example, microgrids, not just with very urban and kind of like modern buildings, but kind of like energy access for all, right? Either the charging vehicles or batteries. Hopefully, they can go to more locations than what we have so far. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
It's certainly that, the microgrid system also, I think this is, as you mentioned, and also local energy and building, as Cristina was saying, kind of building as providing their own energy also is I think key. And battery storage, and of course, cars are battery storage. This is the concept of having these cars that are sitting on thermal cars that are sitting on the curb doing nothing for most of their lives, while when you're going to have battery powered cars, then these batteries can help your house. They can provide energy to your house and then also connect to the microgrid as a renewable microgrid with a car infrastructure that would charge from this infrastructure, could bring autonomy for Cristina's building. And this is I think this is the view that we have and that we share here.
Yeah, and I would just add that storage will also be really helpful, obviously, from a grid perspective, to minimize when the grid is at peak, right? People can then use their battery storage. But also that will help from a bill perspective, from a utility bill perspective, because if you're using your storage, again, instead of using electricity when it's during peak times, which is typically when everyone is using it, then that can also help lower your electricity bills, which is really important. And again, it ties back to the point that we've been mentioning before about, making sure that this transition isn't burdening communities that have already been burdened. And one way that they've been burdened is economically, either through rent burden or energy bill burden. And so we don't want this transition to exacerbate that. And so battery storage will be a way that we can offset that by making sure that people have the option to use their electricity and to not have to use their electricity during these peak times.
Yeah. I completely agree with you both. I think it completes really nicely to have the picture where potentially even your vehicle can contribute to those peaks, right? I think in order to not hurt some other minoritized communities, I wonder what your thoughts could be in terms of the pricing, right? Maybe as we get these projects larger and larger, how do you essentially communicate to some of these communities, okay, we're going to be cycling your battery on your car you might have to use very soon for work, right? I believe that technically we have a lot of research to solve these problems, and we have very successful demonstrations. But I'm curious, how do you see some communities that might not have access to this, so that they are not hurt by, maybe a pricing scheme or a contribution, that might hurt your car battery warranty, right? Kind of like the logistics of this. Any good ideas that you might have?
I would just say a lot of this, comes to education, like, any type of policy program or initiative that has the potential to exacerbate any burden, especially on a community that, communities that are always at the forefront of climate change impacts, yet they were the communities that least contributed to the situation that we're in today. I think anything that has the potential to exacerbate a burden needs to be well communicated, and it needs to be a city's priority to minimize that, or to avoid it completely, or have barriers in place where the city or manufacturers, utilities are coming together to make sure that these communities are protected. So for me, it really comes down to there needs to be a lot of education up front and awareness about what's happening. We need to make sure that these communities are not left behind. And if there is potential of a burden, then it needs to be a city's priority to minimize that and avoid that at all costs.
Right, agreed.
Yeah, and the devil is in the details, and Inferno is paved with good intention. So, and it's going to be tough, and I think the activism, the environmental activism, is going to, it needs, in my case, it has shift to kind of a resilient activism and determination, because everything, everything falls back into what you know, and everything
Right.
you need to do is totally the unknown. So you need to have this kind of a jump in the unknown feeling, and it's not going to be, and it is not, let me tell you, it's not comfortable for anyone. So even with all the good intentions, you still have to kind of build resiliency into knowing that the future is not going to be something that you have any reference to.
Right. I completely agree also, Pierre. I was thinking about Christina's example of how, for example, the city should be involved in continuing this education. In the example that I mentioned earlier about our marine energy microgrids and the pack wave testing center, this has been, now that it's under construction, under the hood, there's been years and years of collaboration, for example, with the fishing community, right? What is the location of putting these pods, right? And I believe that a lot of these projects need to go beyond just, okay, we want to collaborate just to get the permission and get the project going. But we need to incorporate this feedback and this engagement during the project so that you see what is the benefit and have a continuous evaluation of what's coming out of that project, not just to get the signature, right? And I think that I hope that happens in some of these other projects that they're going to come online very soon, right?
I completely agree. And, it makes me think of the saying, like, nothing for us without us. Communities that, when decisions are being made about actions, again, policy, programs, pilots, whatever it is, if they're going to, even if they're like Pierre said, they're made with good intentions to resolve a problem for a community, but the community needs to be at the table for this conversation, right? They understand, they're the experts of their lived experiences. So they need to be at the table to have the conversations, to co-create the solution to the problem, co-create the metrics that are then used to evaluate the solution. They need to be part of that conversation from the beginning and throughout the whole thing, as you said, not just for, a sign off, but so that, these solutions are really co-created, and the community has buy-in and trust. And we just all need to be on the same page about that.
I think we all agree. And these pods, and as Eduardo, you were kind of saying, these pods, they're the key, the hyper-local pods, community services that engage also the community, because it's kind of it's not just the community that needs to be part of it, that needs to be part of the solution or need to be engaged, but also the services that will bring these pods need to engage the community, meaning that they need to be an asset to, I'm going to go to my grocery store, I can rent a car, I have a bike, I can put my, I can have my my box where my Amazon is going to be, that everything is going to be centralized, so people can belong to something that provides services and also that can be engaged. So this is kind of it needs a lot of activism to bring these people together. And this is where I was saying kind of the engagement of this, the civil society is so key for this, that we need to kind of be this, the circular economy of engaging people in their community.
Yeah, sometimes you get very surprising results, right? And when you have a truly meaningful collaboration, I was just thinking, and the group that we have a collaboration with University of Alaska Fairbanks, they were trying with the Native American community a prototype for a river turbine, right? Also for marine energy. And it really had technically a really nice deflector so that it would not damage, for example, the debris of the wood coming into the turbine. And actually the collaboration with that community, they were just ecstatic that they were able to leverage those resources and facilitate that, right? So it was a really nice collaboration where, I might have seen, externally from that project that maybe it couldn't have worked. So they were essentially the group that really pushed it beyond the technical challenge. So I thought that was a really, really nice story.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, this kind of holistic approach of involving more voices into the solutions also creates just different points of views that can help us, get to this solution quicker in a more holistic way. So I think just having these different voices at the table is so beneficial.
Yeah, I think, Pierre, go ahead. I was just gonna say that it seems like we have a minute or so. So I was kind of, I said, moderating that it's gone so quickly, but it was really nice to chat about this. So those are my departing thoughts as well, that I agree that, you can have a very meaningful collaboration with everyone at the table.
Yeah.
Agreed. Thank you for having me.